The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRCMedia, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
We are getting set here at FRCMedia for the municipal election in Fall River, which happens on November 4th, and we're speaking to as many candidates as we can between now and then, so when you go to the polls, you can make an informed decision. We're going to focus on the city council race today. There are 14 candidates on the ballot, and I'm pleased to be joined by one of the challengers looking to get on the council for the first time. He is Michael Canuel. Michael, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
Good, Keith. Thank you.
When I first met you again earlier this summer, when you announced your plans to run, you looked familiar to me, and then you said, well, it's because I actually ran before. But it was quite a while before. Talk about that first run, when it was, and how you made out and all of that.
Yeah, sure. So technically, I've actually run twice.
Oh, okay.
First time was in 2007. I didn't really get very far. I don't know if you recall, but on election night, I had lost, and then shortly the next day, the election commissioner at the time told me that I had won narrowly and that I would be moving on to the general election. But then
So that was the preliminary election at the time?
That was the preliminary election, okay. Yeah. And then by late afternoon that next day, I was already off the ballot again. So there was this back and forth where I had lost on election night, then I had won, but in the end, I had lost on primary night. So finished 19th place and out of the running for the general election. But then I ran in 2009, and things went a lot better. I did really well, did pretty good in the primary. In the general election, I finished 13th place. I think it was like 500, 600 votes short of making it onto the council, but a pretty healthy vote total back then. But then I just kind of said at the time, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It just wasn't. I didn't think I could win at the time, and I didn't think I was just in a good spot, just where I was, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was a young guy. I was at the time, was that 16 years ago? So I was 26 years old at the time. So.
Yeah, and then in the meantime, you have a family, so that also took a lot of your time doing that. But you decided to run this year. Why 2025?
Yeah, so after that 2009 loss, I had many people for many years asking me in 2011 if I was going to run. In 2013, if I was going to run. By 2015, people really kind of stopped asking me at the time. And what they don't, what was going on in the background of those years is after that 2009 loss, I met a wonderful woman, which I proposed to in 2011, which was an election year. In 2013, which was another election year, we got married. In 2015, another election year, we had our first child. In 2017, another election year, we had our second child. In 2019, another election year, she was expecting with our third and final child. And then COVID happened, and it's kind of just things that happened at work and just in general in society. I started to think about maybe I should go back to school. I had a bachelor's degree in political science. I was just thinking, you know what, it probably wouldn't hurt at this point to maybe go pursue my master's. Even though I didn't think I was ever going to run again for office, I had also said in 2005 I probably was done with school and wasn't ever going back. But in 2021, I made the decision to go back, pursued my master's degree in business analytics, which 2021, of course, was another election year. And I graduated in 2023, which was another election year. So this is really the first election year where I haven't had something really major going on in my life that, I'll call it a milestone of sorts, I'll also say this is the first year since probably 2015, so it's been about 10 years, that people started asking me if I would run again, if I would ever run again. But the phrasing of the question was a little bit different this time. People used to ask me, are you going to run again? This year, as early as March and April, people were saying, Michael, we really need you to run again. You're a lot more experienced. You have your master's degree. You're an analytics guy. You're a numbers guy. That's what we need more of on the city council. And this year, there were a lot of people, more than probably any of the years after I stopped running, people asking me and encouraging me to run. So yeah. I said, you know what? I believe that there's a time for everything, and that everything's about timing. And I prayed on it and talked with family, my wife, my friends, and we decided that we would give this another go.
Yeah. So, as you prepare for another run, a lot has changed in campaigning since 2009. Social media basically has been a big difference. What have you seen as a difference running, or is it the same? You have to meet people, get the word out. I mean, what are the differences for you, and what are some things that maybe are the same?
It's vastly different than it was. I looked back, 2009, Facebook was there, but it wasn't really an outlet that you used to really get your message out. It is one today. I don't know how much it'll translate into people going to the polls, but you have to be there. I want to meet people where they are, and online is one of the places that people utilize. So I have a Facebook page, I have a web page, and I try and post there regularly, keep people informed of some ideas and the events I'm going to. I'll say I did a lot of door-to-door in 2009, and I started doing that just from my nomination papers, going up and down streets, and I noticed right away people were not answering the doors as much as they did in 2009. You're talking to people through Ring cameras, the Ring doorbells. They didn't. Not as many people come to the door. They think you're selling solar or something like that. So that was a big difference for me as well in the recent campaign. Yeah.
So as you, when you do talk to people, either it's at events, because I know you're out there quite a bit at events. I was here for preliminary election night, and I was leaving to get ready to go to Durfee for our coverage of the results, and you were holding your sign right out here at Bristol Community College, even though you weren't on the ballot. Visibility is everything still, right? Regardless.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I knew that the preliminary election turnout would probably be low with just the mayoral race on the ballot. But one thing I knew is that the people out on preliminary election night really care about Fall River because they're out there, even with just two people to narrow it down to out of 5 candidates. They're out there, and I figure if they're going on election day in the primary, they will be going in November. They really care deeply about the city. They care about it deeply just as much as I do, and I thought it was just a great opportunity to meet people. When it gets to November 4th, it's probably going to be crowded out there. Every candidate running for school committee, mayor, and city council is going to be out there, and I said to myself, I think I'll be able to stand out a little bit on this primary election day, going out there meeting people, and it was to my benefit because there were people who got out of their cars, and walked down because we have to be so many feet away from the polls, and for some of these locations, it's quite the walk, and some people made that walk over just to talk to me because they saw me out there, and I didn't see your name on the ballot. I told them I will be there in November, right. But I'm out there to get my name out today.
All right. If you're elected in November and start in January, what's going to be the top issue you want to focus on?
Well, I think for me, public safety is a big thing in Fall River, and I think a lot of people talk about public safety, but everybody I talk to, they don't feel as safe in this community as they once did. I mean, when I ran in 2009, I think there was, to some extent, people still left their doors unlocked in some cases. People don't feel as safe in the community, and when you think about just the staffing levels, I'm a numbers person. We have the lowest staffing levels I think we've ever had on almost all the public safety levels. So that's a big priority for me as a member of the city council, one vote who can advocate. I think for me, public safety is one of the biggest priorities for me, to make sure that we get the staffing up to where we need it to be, up to where people feel safe again. Because when you think about moving into the city, whether you think about opening up a business in this city, one of the things you're going to look at is whether or not it's safe to do that, right? And I think that's an area that, over the past couple decades, we'll say, has been treated as a line item that can be cut. And I don't think we should look at it that way.
Now, are you in favor of trying to increase staffing within the realm of the current budget? I mean, the city budget this year, with the enterprise funds included, is over $500 million. Would you be looking at ways? I know, city council can only approve, reject, or reduce. They have no way to actually move money around. But are you hopeful that you can make some inroads in just discussing the issue with whoever the mayor happens to be, in terms of making sure that those police and fire department positions are fully staffed?
Yeah, so I think, the budget that we have today is challenging, right? Because a lot of it is already allocated, whether it be contracts we've signed or things like that. I think we have to look at new ways to raise that money. One of the things that I've been doing over the last several months is I've been going to as many of the neighborhood association meetings as I can get to. And one of the things that stood out for me when I went to the Bank Street Neighborhood Association meeting was they had, I believe it was a sergeant on the police department who provided statistics on the people who were speeding on the Northeastern Avenue portion between Locust Street and New Boston Road. And they had some statistics. In the month of June, I think it was something like 94,000 cars had gone down that avenue. They have this thing right in the median that tells you your speed is this. Well,
Yeah, right.
when they have those things, they're actually counting the number of cars that are going and the speed there of which they're going with. And they said, oh, you guys are doing pretty good over here. It's like 95% compliant. Now, I'm a numbers guy, right? And I started breaking it down, and I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, okay, well, 95% of compliance, okay, but that's still like 1,700 cars that were doing 10 or more miles over the limit. So, think about people cruising through that avenue at 50 miles an hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone. And I started to wonder, like, if we started to just go back to when I was a kid, I lived right in that area. I lived on Freeloft Street growing up, and there was always probably 8-9 months a year. It was a full-time job. There was a motorcycle division police officer right on Hiram Street, which is bordering Eastern Avenue, and he'd kind of be there. And I remember talking to him as a kid. And he used to only tell me, "Oh, we don't just go after people a few miles an hour over. You got to be like 10 miles an hour over." When I started to do the math of the statistics that this sergeant was providing, I said, "What if we just started writing, addressing people who are 10 miles per hour over the speed limit?" Because you start running the numbers on that. It would be a very significant amount of money that would pay for that police officer to do that job, and over the course of a year would pay for many other additional police officers potentially. But it doesn't have to be police. It could be police and fire. It could go anywhere. There's no enterprise fund when it comes to the police. We do have to split any revenue between the state and the city, but just on the numbers I was looking at in June, this is, even with regression, like people knowing that this is being patrolled more, there would be a lot of revenue to be made just in that area. And I think about, okay, that's just one road. What if we did this when I was a kid? I think they had this on Plymouth Avenue. They had this on Broadway. You do this in a few different spots, and we could raise some substantial public safety resources, whether it be additional police, again, helping get fire up to speed. But I think the people of Fall River are really at a point where, they're tired of their taxes going up. So I think we have to start looking at ways to increase our presence for public safety. And the other thing it did, just you had a police presence right in that neighborhood. It really helped, reduce crime in those areas when you just have those offices nearby.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit. A year from now, Route 79, the construction of the road itself will be finished, and then the work will begin in terms of what goes down on that 19 plus acres of land down there. What would you like to see down there, and how do you think it could help with other issues in Fall River, primarily the housing issue? I know the mayor, the plans are that to have some residences down there, primarily market rate housing. What do you like to see down there, and how do you think it'll impact the rest of the city?
So, I think when I think about what we should have down there, we had a master plan done. I think it was UMass Dartmouth who organized that master plan. That's what was sold to the residents on, what would be done with that property down there. So I think going back to that, I think we should be dusting off the book of what the master plan was. There's a lot of time and investment in that. And I think, the many residents I've talked to, they want to see what was originally promised to them in that master plan. So I think, from that perspective, as much as we can go and adhere to what was the plan. I know plans change a little bit, right, in terms of reality, but I think, keeping as much green space as we can, certainly getting that area revitalized with some development, get people down there. One of my biggest concerns, though, just in terms of what they're doing in proposals and what I'm seeing, whether it be housing or otherwise, is, we're going to have a public safety problem down there, I think. Just, the closest fire truck, for example, will be on Stanley Street. We don't have the one that's where the Fire Museum is on North Main Street anymore. If a developer comes in there, I would love to see a potential, give us a garage or two where we could put a fire truck or an ambulance down there, because I think having that right in that vicinity, if they're putting people down there, putting businesses down there, it can make a difference between life and death. It can make the big difference just in whether a place burns down or it goes out quick.
Yeah. Got a few minutes left. I want to ask you, if elected, you'll be one of 9. It's a lot different from the mayor when you are the only person in an executive position. You have to work with 8 others. You need to count the 5, right, to get votes passed. How do you view your ability to cooperate and collaborate with colleagues?
Well, I think for me, I'm a numbers guy. As I mentioned, I have a master's in business analytics. I do business analysis for a living. And the biggest thing I like to bring to the table is the facts, the data, the numbers. And there's a quote that we have at work that says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And I think for me, being able to show my colleagues the numbers, I'm a long-term visionary. When I think about if we're going to do capital projects, we got to make sure we actually put the money behind it. I think for me, it's making sure that my colleagues understand not just the soft side of things, but just here's the implications financially. Here are all the angles we should consider. I think, I've been able, what I do in organizations, what I do at work, just being able to persuade people with data, I think is a big piece for me.
All right, Michael Canuel, good luck in the election, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you having me on here.
All right, and thank you for joining us here at FRC Media. Please vote on November 4th.